Herzlich willkommen zum zweiten Tag hier bei der Studioszene 2023 in Hamburg. Erster Speaker heute, our first speaker, is Jill Zimmermann, originally from Krefeld. She studied at the university in Düsseldorf and then at the SAE in Cologne. But now she's been in Canada for almost 10 years at Jukasa Recording Studios?
Yes, correct.
All right. And she has worked with artists like 3 Days Grace, Alexisonfire, Alice Cooper, City and Color, and now recently you just said Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And you have worked with so many of my idol producers like Bob Ezrin, Howard Benson, Mike Plotnikov.
Yes.
So I'm really curious to hear something about all those stories. It's about vocal production today.
Yes.
So we're going to dive deep into vocal production, vocal recording, and all the tips and tricks. You have won the Juno Award, the Canadian Music Award, three times. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
So I'm glad she's here. Please give a warm welcome to Jill Zimmermann.
Yeah, thanks so much. So for me, vocal production is very important because it's the one element that most people recognize in a song, right? Like there is certain songs that have a certain bass line that you might recognize, or certain drum fill, but generally vocals are the thing that people connect to most. They sing it, they hum the melody, they dance along to it, they recognize the song, right? So it's one of the most important elements, and even nowadays, the vocals get mixed higher and higher in the mix. They get even more important. And we've evolved so much in vocal production where things get super clean, super tight, or they can still be very loose. And it kind of depends on the genre. And the song I brought is a hard rock song. And it's kind of representative for most of the hard rock songs, how they get treated, how many different layers you have, and how you really go about it. But really the most important thing about vocal production is communication and making the singer feel good. And I say that because the singing is the only instrument that comes out of you. Like you can change a guitar if it's out of tune, you can tune things up, you can just go to a different instrument if you don't like that one, but you really are born with your voice and you have to learn how to deal with that. So it's a lot more intimate. A lot of singers don't really like to have a lot of people in the room. Like it's not like the whole rest of the recording where the whole band is there and it's like this wonderful moment together. Usually vocals are a little bit more intimate, just one-on-one. Sometimes there's another person in the room. But it's very important to keep it comfortable and just make sure that the singer has everything they have to actually perform. And it starts from little things like making sure they have water. They have room temperature water too, or tea. But certain things are not allowed, for example, and you really have to make sure that the vibe is there. They have their lighting that they want. They have the lyrics printed out so that in the worst case, they can go back to it, even though they won't, because a lot of singers are very well prepared. But it helps them to just know there's this little piece of paper that can help them if they just get stuck. And it helps you to also keep on track that the vocals don't change while recording. Like I love having a lyric sheet with me because it happens so often that they're maybe a little nervous or in the moment and then they change the lyrics. And then when you comp, you either have two different options and you don't know which one to go with, or they completely changed it on every take. And then afterwards they're like, oh no, we have to redo this. That's like an old lyric from when I started writing the song. So it's very important to have the latest lyric sheet available. You also just to take notes. Sometimes it helps to write down which take was really good and which one was not. And then when you have that great, vibe, ambience, they feel comfortable, the next thing is you have to learn how to push a singer, but not over the edge. Because the problem with vocals is once you go too far, especially with screams and like really rough vocals, like chorus vocals, they usually have a lot of energy. And if you go over, sometimes you can't go back on the same day, and it's really hard and it takes a long time to recover. So you have to gradually warm them up. A lot of singers, they don't really have vocal lessons or not enough. especially in the rock genre. Like if you do classical, they all know how to warm up perfectly, but a lot of rock singers are not quite aware of that. So I generally like starting with just doing 1 or 2 vocal takes, just to get them comfortable, to get them with the headphones right, to just calm down and be like, okay, no, I know this song, and just get used to the environment and just listening back on headphones, which is still different, right? Like we all listen back right now on headphones, but talking and then hearing yourself back, or singing and hearing yourself back, it's a very different experience. So you have to make everything as easy as you can for them, so that the singers can just focus on the one thing they have to do, and that's singing. Like you tell them which order to go, you're very structured, you tell them why you do it, you have to be the one telling them when to take breaks, because a lot of singers don't. They feel like, I'm in it. Like, yeah, but if you go over the threshold, you will not be in it for a few days, maybe. So you have to be the one in charge, leading the session, really. And it starts all with like the little things, right? Like headphone mixes, for example. Another thing. I like giving them what I call a karaoke mix, because they should not worry about how loud should the drums be versus the bass, and where should I pan the guitars. That's too much for them to worry about, and then it takes away from their attention. They have to be really focused. And it's really important that they just literally have one knob for volume. That's about it. Sometimes, like I do give them the vocals separately, so when they do harmonies, they can change it. But it's very important to give them only that much freedom, and that's it. So they just don't worry about it all. They need to know that you are taking care of them, and they just have to do what they do best. And there's a few other things too. Like nowadays, for example, there's a lot of remote recording, and I've done a few sessions that way, where you're just on Zoom, but then you really listen on there's this plugin called Listen To. So it gives you the full audio, full quality audio over the internet. That's a possibility, but the problems I see with that generally is that it's really hard to intervene in the session, because there's always some kind of communication error. And communication is really key. Like, for me, you have to communicate to the singer ahead of time to know what are they expecting, what do they really want, and then decipher what they want, because sometimes they don't really know how to say that either. So sometimes they say, oh, we want it really tight, and then you can play them a few songs and be like, this or like that, like what kind of vocals do you envision yourself in? It helps when they have released songs to listen to those, to know where they come from. And then also definitely listen to demos, because it gives you an idea of how good of a singer it is. And with good, I just mean really experienced. Like, for me, it doesn't matter how, if you're a little out of tune, well, you can fix that, right? But you can fix the performance, and that usually comes with experience and with people just doing it more often. And the more they feel like, oh yeah, I know what to do, the more confident they feel and give you a better performance. And that's really what we're after. I don't care about the tuning aspect. I can tune after. I mean, they should be relatively in tune, right? You can't go way off the charts, but that's all stuff that can be fixed. Timing, it can be fixed. It's fine. Like, as long as you get it in the ballpark of knowing that is fixable without it being too artifacty. Like, especially lead vocals, they have to be really clean and well done. And then you have to see how much time do you have for that session. Like, if it's something where you have the whole day, take the time and try different mics, because every singer might need a different mic. And as much as I have like a few go-to mics, especially if there's not much time, and I know that, when a singer's a little nervous in the beginning, sometimes it's better to just get them going and not to try out different mics, because then they get a little insecure, thinking, why do I sound better on this? What's going on? It's just, sometimes it's better to just get them going. So have like a certain setting ready, so that in worst case you can just start right away and skip the step and know that this mic will do great. But sometimes when you have the time and you have an experienced singer and they're not nervous, go for 2-3 different mics just to see which one works better. And then always have an SM7B on hand for screams, because most mics don't really handle them as well. So anything that's like really powerful, I just go to a 7B, because first of all, they can hold it in the hand, so they can distort their body however they need to when they're like live on stage, because nobody stands straight and screams it out, right? They're all like having their stands, so they can hold it in their hand and they can just go for it. And you can only do like 2 or 3 a day anyways, so that's always like set up in the side. But aside from that, yeah, have your vocal chain ready. So for me, it's generally a large diaphragm, like a U87 or U67, depending on what it is. But that can also change if sometimes people come in and they have a favorite mic and they know it sounds good on them. And then always compress, very important, because singers are very dynamic, and if you don't compress, you can say you can do it after, but it really doesn't sound the same because they need to hear themselves compress to also perform better. Generally, I strive for going from -6 to -12 dBs, like in that range, so that it's not too crazy, but they're still dynamic. I don't want to like squash them. And when there's lower parts, like verses, you do have to account for them being a little lower than the choruses, which that's just normal. And then after the compressor, I don't really EQ much before, because for me, I can do that after. And then you just get them going on 2 takes through. That gives you the chance to flag out the song if you haven't already. Like sometimes you just come in, they bring you the session, and you don't really know the song too much. So it gives you like an idea of where is everything? Because you need to know. Like you have to jump over to certain sections when they want you to, so you have to have it flagged out. Another thing that's very important, when you listen to it the first 2 times, what is your personal initial feeling with the song? Like what are they trying to portray? Is it like an angry song? Is it like a little bit more of like a, love song or something? Like you have to figure out what feeling is the singer giving you while singing without any kind of, directions, because that's always giving you the best idea of what the song is about, what the energy gives you. And then figure out what you liked about those takes and what you didn't. Obviously, they will stop in between to like get the headphones right. They will stop in between because they forgot a word, or sometimes there's like certain parts where they overlap and they have to just stop for a second. So it's not the best representation for performance, but it's the best presentation for they don't think about anything yet until you tell them how to perform better. And the way I go about after those 2 takes, I also dial in everything relatively quick. So within, I'd say, verse and chorus, I already have the sound. I can't take longer because it will throw off the singer. You have to be relatively quick. But because I only use a compressor and a pre, it's not that much to really dial in. And I just have to make sure that all sounds great and have generally a slight reverb on there, just so they don't feel completely unnatural. Because we are not used to not having any reverb on our vocals. Like we hear ourselves back and it bounces back, and there's always some natural reverb on it. So for me, you have to have a little bit on there and make sure that it's not overbearing. So after those 2, I generally go and start with verse 1. It's usually the one that has the lowest energy. It's just, it's starting off. And sometimes if I feel I don't really get enough out of them in the first verse, but they're getting better, I might go to the second verse. And when I have the second verse, I go back to the first, just because then they're really warmed up. And I don't want them. The reason why I jump it back is because sometimes when you're on the same section over and over and over again, you as a singer get really frustrated. You're like, why don't I get this? Like, I've sang this song so many times. And then once you get in your head, you're not going to perform well. Like, you really should not think. That's the best way to think of it. So you go to verse 1, you go to verse 2, great. Once you have those, maybe you jump back to verse 1. For me, I generally aim for 4 to 5 takes that are great, and that's it. Because that's enough to comp from. But if it's just 4 or 5 takes and I know there is a lot of issues, and on the lyric sheet I can usually mark down if there's a certain part that was always an issue, I try to say that in between, and I don't give more than 1 or 2 little bits of advice in between. And I have to always listen to how it's being perceived, because sometimes people cannot take directions too much at once. Like we all know that, right? Like you do something and somebody's like, yeah, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. And all of a sudden you don't even know what to focus on. So for me, I always think of, okay, what's the main thing for me that I need to get out of this performance right now? And if it's something like you always say this word wrong, that might be a big issue. So I want to correct that earlier on. If it's a timing thing, that can happen in a little later because it's something I can fix. And if it's just something like, they just overperformed, which we all know happens too, and sometimes people are just thinking, okay, I have to sing with emotion. Don't think of it. Because whenever people think they have to sing with emotion, they go overboard and it sounds fake. So things like that have to be corrected relatively early on. But you can't do too much at once because people don't take criticism too well if it's too much at once. Because then they feel defeated and think oh, I suck today, it's not a good day, and then the whole mood changes and you really don't want that. So you have to even be light, make little jokes in between, not about the singer, but just about, this person has had the same issue and look at what I've done, right? So you just keep things generally very happy and light so they know you're in their corner. Even if you give them criticism, it has to be constructive and positive because they have to know you have their best interests at heart. You're not trying to be oh yeah, I'm producing you, I'll tell you what to do. That doesn't work, ever. And then after that, usually if there's a pre or a bridge, that's a natural way to go further because it's not as energetic as the chorus, but it does already give you a little bit more energy than the verses do. So you go that route, and after that, and for pre's, if they're relatively short, 2-3 good takes are fine. I don't need to pound them to do it over and over and over again. And you have to take a lot of breaks too. So generally after the pre's, I definitely insist on them having a short little 5-minute break. Drink some water, use the washroom, because once the chorus comes, I need them in their headspace. They need to be focused. They need to know this is really what the song is about. A lot of people don't really know lyrics of the verses too well sometimes, and that's fine. But the chorus is really where people go and sing and jump and know the song. And ideally, obviously, if it's a really well-written song, at the second or third chorus, they can already sing with it, or at least parts of it. So you want those parts to be really well. And one thing to figure out ahead of time, maybe in that little break, is what can we copy and paste? And as much as I'm not necessarily a fan of copy and pasting, for music that is hard rock, where you have a lot of energy, it really makes no sense to do every chorus again and again and again, because it gets frustrating, because you want to have doubles and triples, so they have to sing it again, and it just takes the load off. Now, I'm not a fan of everything has to be exactly the same. Sometimes you can say, okay, maybe first and second chorus are the same, but the third one has a lot more energy. And you can just do the third one again to have just another layer. So that helps too. But you should establish ahead of time what can be copied and pasted so you don't overuse the singer. Really, the voice is something very sensitive. It can be triggered by humidity in the room, if it's too dry, if they don't drink enough. You have to really maintain it during the whole recording. So when you actually do sing the chorus, maybe if the first and second are the same, the second verse is generally a little bit more energetic, so get them in from the second verse. Just do the second chorus and then put it over the first. And always check if that also works, because sometimes it's too much energy, they give too much energy and it's too strong and it might not work. So you always want to check while the singers are in the room if all your copies and pastes actually work. Because sometimes, technically they work, but from the flow of the song, they might not. So you have to check that also ahead of time. And when you go with the choruses, what I try to do is not really get them to sing doubles and triples, but just record more and tell them it's going to be for doubles and triples. And the reason why is because sometimes there has been times in the beginning of my career where I had a great lead vocal for the chorus, And then I got them to do the double and the triple, but I didn't have the time to comp it, so it wasn't even the final lead vocal. And I had my head so fixed on this being the lead vocal that I didn't consider the double and the triple as maybe being better, because they have sung that section so many times. So what I do is I'll tell them straight up, look, I want to have a double and a triple, so I need you to sing this a lot more. So don't be offended if I take more takes on this. Let them know. Because a lot of people okay, why do I have to do this for the 8th time? Well, the first 2 didn't work out. Now we're getting good takes, but I do want more because of this reason. So they are not getting discouraged, okay, I've sang this 8 times, what's going on? You tell them the chorus is important. I'm using double and triple too, so I want really good takes to supplement your lead vocal. And then they know, okay, no, it's not me, it's just instead of singing a double and triple, I'm just singing more takes. And then what it really gives you is a bigger range of vocals that you can work with. Because maybe the very last take he sang that was supposed to be a triple is actually way better than the one you would have chosen as a lead vocal. So it really helps to just be very communicative about it and tell them straight up, look, this is what's going on. Don't be afraid, you will have to sing this more often than you had the verses because of this reason. And then they can usually deal with it better psychologically. And it really helps to go that route and just to always tell them ahead of time, why do you need extra takes? Why do you need just a certain part? Why do you make them break it up? Because there's times too when things overlap. I always make them break it up because they don't have enough breath to actually perform. And then you can hear sometimes when people sing something like that and it just dips because they don't have a breath, and then they get a breath in between, it goes back up. That's not good. You shouldn't, as a listener, hear that the singer was out of breath, ever. It's just not necessary, because it also just distracts from really the flow of the song. So you just go for it. Usually I've done those and the bridge too. It depends if the bridge is high energy or if it's a breakdown. If it's a breakdown, I would have done it before the chorus, just because the voice is a little cleaner and not as raspy. Because during the chorus, when they have high energy, it rasps it up. It's weird how the voice works, but it just makes it a little bit more gritty, which is perfect for harmonies, by the way. So I'm always happy to do choruses before harmonies because it gives you a little bit more grit on your voice. For harmonies, it's more like a texture for me, so having just a little bit thicker vocals for the harmonies, and also them having known that, yes, the main things are done. Everything else is a little lower in the mix, so I can relax. It helps them sing actually better too for the harmonies, because a lot of people struggle with harmonies and they always think, oh, I don't know how to sing harmonies. Yes, you just haven't practiced it enough because it's harder for you. You have to record yourself and then sing harmonies to yourself. And a lot of people don't do that. So it gives them a little bit of confidence knowing I did most of what I had to do. The most important parts are done. I mean, obviously, everything else is still important, but it's a little bit less pressure, I'd say. And it really helps them to get along and just understand, okay, yes, I can do this. It's been good so far, because at that point you've had half your session are done. And they know that it's going well, you're helping them, and then they can move on to the so dreaded harmonies that people do. And sometimes in between, when I see that people are getting frustrated, one thing I generally do is also either just a low octave, which is easy to do for them, or a whisper track, because it adds some weird element that people don't really know how to put it in. It adds something, and I can show you later. In this song, I have some whisper tracks. But I don't do it all throughout, so during the recording, I do make notes where he should whisper and put that in. It's just kind of not a spooky thing, but it's it adds some kind of mystery, because people can't really know what it is. It's just something that's whispered in the track. So that's sometimes fun to do when people are a little frustrated with harmonies halfway. So you're you can whisper, just do this here. Just a little break. We still move on with basically recording. We're not losing time. but they get a little break from being frustrated at times. So that's really important too, to know what do you all need and how can you stack it in between so that people move along but don't really feel the frustrations, because it can be really hard sometimes, right? And for harmonies too, if people don't really get them sometimes, it's totally fine to break them up in smaller pieces so they understand. And one of the things I tell people too, like people that don't really sing harmonies often, they generally mess up the first note because they hear the melody and then they always try to tend to go to the melody. And I always tell them, look, we're not analog anymore. I can just cut it out. Like, just sing the beginning note of your harmony a few times in the pre-roll that I give you. If I give you 4 bars, just sing, and then you have that note readily available because it's a muscle memory too. Your throat literally just had this note in you. So it's not too much break between me saying, okay, that's the harmony, and here's the 4 bars to go in. And they do need about 2 to 4 bars because they need to have the rhythm, right? So you can't just jump straight in. So those are little things I do just so people know, okay, it can be cut out. It sounds really ridiculous doing that note, but it really helps people to find the first note. And once you have the first note, it's actually way easier to sing your harmony. And you're a lot more confident because you know you have your first note and you're not like trying to guess and then everything goes bad. Like, that's one of the things that is really important for a lot of, not even newbies, but like I'd say if you've only done 1 or 2 records, it's still very valuable to do that. And then after that, when everything is really done, and I have to make sure with the artist, I copy everything over where it should be, and we just have like a general run through. I just want them to know everything's there, but also it's not tuned, it's not even comped yet because it takes time to comp. Is that all the parts? Because sometimes there's like, oh yeah, there was this little thing I do, which you completely forgot because it was just a different extra layer that they had, like a little shout here or there. So once that is all done, you basically go to the screams and the shouts, because once you do them a few times, your voice is really fried and you can't really do much more after that. And once they've done that, usually people love doing the screams and the shouts, really, which is great. But you have to make sure that everything is already set. Like, for example, your compressor might, like your preamp and your compressor might have to change. And because I generally use a 7B for that anyways, I want them to just test it, but not too crazy, just so I have like a level and it's not clipping, because I don't have that many screams from the singer. You only get a certain amount, and then after that, they need to have a long break. One thing I do also before that is a complete, I call it the fuck it take, where it's just like, anything I told you today, forget about it. Just, now that you're warmed up, now that you've sang the song, you know the song, just sing it through. I just press record, just press play, I don't care. I don't have to be in the room, just do you. Because sometimes people have so much emotion in that take, because they have the confidence of having sung that song, though the lyrics are really in their head. They know, okay, that was the thing I struggled with earlier, but I've sang it so many times since then, I know what to do now. And then there's this random gold in there sometimes. I never take only that take, ever. But there's like a little here, a little phrase there, because they really love just not thinking about anything I said. Where I don't stop them and say, can you just do that again, but do it this way? No, just sing one last time, however you want to. And then screams, and that's pretty much it. But you have to make sure in between that they take a lot of breaks. Anytime they have like a little something like that, immediately drink some water. Do you need a tea? Do you need to use the washroom? Like, just please take care of yourself, because otherwise we have to do another day. And you might not feel the same that day. You might not perform the same that day. Maybe it's not even the same studio, and then you have different mics and different preamps, and it's really a deal to, at least for the main vocals, all be from the same chain, same day. Harmonies is something you can easily do afterwards in different situations. And that's because they don't have to have the same sonic basics as the other ones. Like it's fine if you have harmonies that are recorded in a different studio with different mics, but the LEaT, that's the main focus for sure. And I'd show you some things from this session, but I think first I'll play it a bit so you all know what it is about.
What I breathe underwater. The silence and the echoes of the distance reach the infinite goal of my existence. It's fading away, it's dumped in the gray. There's gotta be a way out of it. I just keep on digging my grave, 'cause I've been stuck in this way. I don't know why I survive in the fire. What I breathe underwater, breaking the chain, running out into the rain, so I can relieve the pain from the fire. What I breathe underwater, what I breathe underwater. Days after days, all the gazes get lost in the haze. I just wanna drop.
So yeah, those were first verse and chorus and reintro, and I'll just scroll through so you see how many layers there actually is. So over here we have the little hook intro, and there's quite a few, as you can see, with a whoa, breathe underwater, right? Like that's all of this. Then we have the verse. I had to split it in two because it was overlapping at one point. And harmony, normal, that's the chorus over here. And I actually also quadrupled it for the second and third chorus, so it grows naturally. I did it for the first one too, but I took it out because it was just too much. And that's something how you can take energy away too, but just taking a double out. Because sometimes you don't need everything in the beginning. You can just grow naturally, and it gives a lot to the song. And over here is the bridge. That's a whole nother part. And on the bottom, like I said, the low octave and the whisper tracks. And I put the whispers a little louder, and I'm sure you've heard them already in the chorus itself. And yeah, I would say I start with something I did in the vocal intro for this part.
Whoa. Whoa.
So one trick I did to get more tracks out of it is, first of all, I got him to sing it twice, just like it's normally in the song. And because it's the same part, I basically took the first and the second and reversed it underneath, which basically gave me a double without him having to sing even more. I can see how... Because he sang it 4 times, and everything else is just a double or harmony. And then it's very important too to keep your sessions really neat and structured. Use colors, and please use the same color in the track, on the clips, as you use in the track, because once you're along, it helps you really to know what section is it and what kind of effect is it. For example, one thing I did here is the black ones are for me the ones that didn't really exist before or are just effect tracks. So really what he sang was more this.
Whoa.
So it sounds a little thinner, and that's because I wanted him to sing harmonies, but they were out of his range, and that happens quite frequently when you want like a low one or a high one. But I mean, we're all natural. Like, not everybody has Mariah Carey's vocal range of 5 octaves or something, you know. So you have to improvise. So this is with them in.
Whoa.
And what it really is, I'm just gonna solo these. is things that are too high that he couldn't sing went too low. It's pretty up there. But I don't want it to be audible in the sense where, whoa, he sang that high. It's more of a layer, a texture. It adds to it. And I can tell every time, like sometimes I experiment with it and I just go a little crazy and make harmonies. And for me, it's always the best thing to just take it in, take it out. Find a level where it fits very nicely. And if you take it out and you don't miss it, you really don't need it. Because the next mixer is going to be like, yo, I have 150 vocal tracks. What am I going to do with this? So it's very important to also delete stuff you really don't need. But if you take it out and you feel like something's missing, it's probably important and you should keep it in. But make sure that it's also labeled so that the next person that is, you know, unless you're mixing yourself, but if there's another mixer involved, they know this is an effect. This is just to layer it. It's not going to be loud in the mix. And so yeah, I generally do that a lot where, you know where the range of the singer is. You feel it out. You actually try to get them to maybe sing. The high one I didn't get him to sing because that was really high. I got him to sing the low one, but it really didn't go there, and his voice gave out. So at that point, it's better I take his normal vocal, take a different comp, and then with Melodyne just make a fake vocal that didn't exist before. And it's fine because, yes, you get a little artifacty, but you do actually have just a texture. So it's not really audible in the mix. And, you know, solo is one thing, but it's always important to always listen in the mix too. And where am I? Here, for example, the singer wanted to have a certain effect for the pre-chorus. And that's where communication is very important too. He's like, I want this like stutter effect. And like, that can mean a lot of things, especially when you do hip hop too, right? Like, is it before? Is it after? And I asked him, like, do you have any kind of examples? And he's like, yeah, give me a second. And then he played me a song, and I immediately knew what he wanted. So we put that in, and I knew that it's not going to make it because the producer, like the producer of the whole song was like, I don't want anything crazy. I want it to just be normal rock. So I knew it's not going to necessarily make it, but I kept it in to keep the singer happy. And also maybe it would have made it, you know? I mean, ideas are one of those things where it can change everything, or it can just be an idea. So I'll just play that for you too. It's one of those things where you just have to entertain the singer to make them feel comfortable, even if you know it might not really matter later on. As long as it doesn't take, I'd say, more than 15 minutes to do and like edit together, it's totally fine to just take that time and make sure that the singer is really, he's comfortable, but also he knows that you're really looking out for him and trying his ideas and listening to him. You're not like top down telling him what to do, but you're also like, oh, cool, yeah, let's try this out. So this is in the pre-2.
Everything's fading away. There's gotta be a way out of it. Just keep on digging like.
So for me, that wasn't really a stutter effect, but that's what he really meant. So you always have to ask, before you even assume what people mean, what do you mean? Or like ask them more. Like one of the typical things that people always do, you know, like with recording is, oh yeah, the bass is too loud. And then they mean the bass drum and not the bass guitar, things like that, right? And with vocals, you have this, oh, this is too high. Okay, do you mean pitch? Do you mean too high in the mix? Like, is it too loud? Like, what do you mean? And you always have to ask, because there's been so many times I just do what I think was right, and then it's not, and then you just create this little mistrust, I guess, and they're like, oh, she didn't know what I'm talking about. So it's always be like, oh, did you mean this? Okay, cool. And yeah, I mean, it took 5 minutes to really set that up, and he was happy about it. And you can hear actually the whisper track in the very bottom while it goes through. Which is also in the first which is here. Which you can hear, but it's not as loud, but it really adds a lot. Like, I'll just play it and then I'll take the whisper track out.
Just keep on.
And if I take it out. See what I mean? Like, it's just, there's this weird something, and it's just je ne sais quoi, and that really helps to just elevate certain parts of the songs that personally for me, the pre was just really short. It didn't really bridge between chorus and verse as much because it's only a singular one. He didn't want to have any harmonies, and harmonies wouldn't have worked in this part either. So I was like, okay, we need something else to just like make it interesting because it's going to the chorus, and the chorus is the main event really of the song. So you have to like be creative and figure out, okay, what can we do to just get something in there that makes it a little bit more interesting. And then the same for, where did I have this? Here, for the screams. He screamed a total of 3 times, and I comped. And what I did is, first of all, screams do not sound good by themselves. Let's say that how it is. I'll just show you what it is by itself. Great, right? But it doesn't really sound thick, so always give it some saturation, so when they hear themselves back, they feel better about themselves. There's a different plugins you can take, lots of different plugins, but always give them some saturation so they feel really strong. So with a decapitator, it might have been a little bit much, but it makes it a lot thicker. And because I didn't have that much to work with, I took the screams. I'll show you without those 2 extra layers. So the problem here too was it was 2 long screams right behind each other, and for the flow, he couldn't really split them up. So I'm really happy he gave me 4, but it's not very typical. Like a lot of people, the voice breaks out. And for me, that whole section that you just listened to, it just sounded really weak, even though he's screaming. Crazy, right? So I copied it over, and it's the same one that we just listened to on a different track, but an octave down with Little Altar Boy. You can do it with other things. I mean, use whatever page plugin you want, get it down for a low octave, and always cut the low end too, because what you do with low octaves is all the frequencies shift down, and then you have so much low end that is not nice. Like it's just muddy low end, and it just really doesn't help. So just always make sure you cut it after. And with that already, it sounded a little thicker.
On my feet, see me run, 'cause I'm out and rise. Out and rise.
And I basically treated it as a double by having it like 8 dBs lower. But even that wasn't enough for me. I was like, okay, it's like a little thicker, it has a little bit more bottom end. But it's still a little thin. Like it's not really powerful enough. So another thing I did is I just created a harmony. No, actually he's saying that. I asked him to sing a harmony. Yes, he sang it. And by itself, once again, this is also the tuned one. It's not very spectacular. It's more like a growl in a way. But once you put the decapitator on, or just any saturation, really, it gives it a lot more hair, a lot more just strength. And then with everything together,
back on my feet, see me run, 'cause I'm out and rise. Out and rise.
it just gives you a little bit more depth to the whole vocal. And I generally always love when there's at least harmonies available, even in screams, and that's weird because a lot of people don't scream in harmonies, but it really gives you a different dimension. You can pan it a little bit, you can treat it differently. But the main thing is that it's thicker, there's another layer, because you cannot have too many screams onto each other either, because they don't really line up. You can edit them, you can use Vocaline or all these plugins, but it still doesn't line up enough for it to sound like one stream. That's why I did use the low octave off the same take, exactly the same comp, and just put that down. Because it really helped to just move it along and just get it going. And then, like I said, another extra track I do is generally a low octave. Like for the chorus, it would be, for example, this. Doesn't it go? Yeah.
Dig in my grave, stuck in this wave. I survive in the fire.
And you can hear how it's very artifacty. It's very low in the register of the singer, so he wasn't really able to get the notes correctly. And for me, that was fine because it's going to be really low in the mix. And the little artifacty or the little wonkers that are there, it really actually helps rather than distracts. And I can show you how with it off the chorus would sound, and then with it on, it gives it this extra little dimension to just thicken it up, because really what rock is it about is energy. And if you just have a single vocal, you don't really get far, because the guitars are distorted, the bass is really growly, the drums are so crisp and just hitting through, and then you have one vocal. So you really have to give the vocalist all these little tools so they can just feel like they are in the front. They are the frontmen. They are rocking on stage. And they're showing you how the song is actually going. And everyone is following them. Because that's the thing. Like with one vocal, if you're just in a band practice, for example, you don't cut through. Right? So it's very important to give the vocalist his own power. So he knows, no, like on the recording and on stage, it's me. I'm running the show. So yeah, without the low octave, the chorus.
Dig in my grave, 'cause I've been stuck in this way. I don't know why I survive in the fire. What I bring on the water, breaking.
Now with it in.
Dig in my grave, 'cause I've been stuck in this way. I don't know why I survive in the fire. What I bring on the water.
So it's not like audible, like, oh yeah, there's definitely low octave in. No, it's just more of like, okay, here's a little bit more energy. I'll put you up on the podium. So you are having all the frequencies, well, not all of them, but you have a bigger frequency spectrum. Because if you think about a vocalist, generally there's like a certain amount of frequencies they can hit and that's it. And then, guitars are kind of in the same frequency spectrum at times, so you have to really watch. And just giving low octaves really helps them have a larger than life experience that way. And I mean, this is just a typical session, I'd say, for hard rock, but there is also exceptions, and you always have to be open to that. Like that's where the communication comes in. Like when I recorded Alexisonfire, a lot of those takes were just one takers. They've had so many records in their life. They don't want to go through it, and they know what they're looking for. So you have to really play with the singer and hear what their experience is and how they want to go about things. Because a lot of times, they have worked in the studio before, they know what they want, and they know where to go. Some people are a little bit more open towards you. Like when I worked with Matt from 3 Days Grace, he's the best to work with. He's like, I listen to what you say, and I'll just try it out. And if you tell him, I just need one more take, I really do, like, can you just pronounce this word this way? He's like, yep, I got it. Like, he's never questioning anything. But then you work with other bands, like I said, like Alexisonfire, they just need like 2-3 takes. And like, you got everything you need. And usually they are so experienced, they know you got everything you need. Everything else would have just interrupted the recording flow. It would have, stopped them feeling like they are in control of their session. And it's great when you have people that are that experienced that can just tell you, I know what you need, here it is. But in most cases, it helps to really, sit down, especially a session that is this, this layered and has that many different layers. Like, it's not just like, here's a lead vocal, there's a harmony, there's a double, there's way more to that. And that's another reason, too, why I split things up. I don't have everything, like all the lead vocals are not just on one track. I split them up so I can treat them differently when I play them back. Like this was basically a session that I played them back. I didn't really put many effects on it, mainly because I didn't want to, first of all, waste my time mixing, because he's right there. Like, I don't want him to wait around. Like, musicians are very, I love them. They have so much spirit, but when they have motivation, they go. And when you stop that, it creates this weird feeling for them, like they can't be creative when they get stopped. So you have to really take it and go when they're ready. Like when they're like, oh yeah, I really want to sing right now, just go in the booth and do it, because in 5 minutes you might have a different opinion. So yeah, that's mainly how I go about most of the sessions. But really it is a one-on-one thing in every, I mean, this is hard rock genre. Obviously with different ones like pop, you might be even more inclined to doing certain words by itself, because in pop everything has to be really audible. People have to be able to sing the song and not constantly having missed lyrics. Or even if it's just singer-songwriter, you would go completely differently about it, because for them it's more even just singing while playing, right? So for me, I love doing hard rock because it's just a little bit more of a composition. You can really create, you have all the tools, but a lot of it is also in the moment itself, where you're like, you know what, let's just try that out. Because, I mean, the worst that can happen is that you lost maybe 2-3 minutes. Big deal. But usually in that time, you know if it works or not. And you can always play it back. So that's the other thing where it's like good with the communication. Get the singer in the room. Not too often, because they have to obviously feel like, yes, this is my stage. And if you constantly get taken off, it kind of feels differently. But it's really helpful to like have them listen to how you listen to it, which is usually not on headphones. It's in the room. You can talk to them about it. And they hear it in a different setting, because headphones don't really represent as much, especially when you're singing. Like, you're not used to hearing your voice that way. Like, most singers don't listen to their own songs on headphones, let's say like that. So, yeah. Is there any questions?
Excellent, amazing. Yeah.
Sorry.
Shall we open up
Just keep
the
talking.
Q&A? No, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Vocal recording, vocal chains, equipment. Anybody? Here we go.
Yeah.
If you do so much harmony takes and so much double stuff, do you stop and play the takes for yourself, so you know already, okay, I got this, and or do you play it for the singer so he also knows what you have, or do you do that afterwards? When do you check you know that you have everything? How
You mean at the end, or?
While recording,
Okay.
how do you don't lose track of all the things and say, okay, did I have now the double, have everything ready, and is there anything
in an
else?
ideal scenario, I heard the song before, I heard the demo, so I know what's all coming, and I generally make very good notes. Like, also, don't ever be afraid to take notes. You have to know what signal chain you used. Ideally, take even a screenshot of what kind of setting you had, because if you have to come back in for a different song on the record, or even just for, you know, well, we forgot something, or the lyrics changed, or who knows what. It's always good to have screenshots of what you actually did, and make sure that you have everything documented. So what I do in the lyric sheet is I make notes, but then also you can have a take sheet, if that helps you. But for me, take sheets are a little, because you go through sheets so much that it's sometimes a little much for me. So I prefer just the lyric sheet and just write down, yes, got it, no, maybe need it again. And for harmonies, as long as I know I have 2-3 good ones that I can comp from, I'm happy. Unless I want a double harmony, obviously in that case I want a little bit more, but then I communicate that, they know they have to sing more, just because people don't really like singing harmonies as much. There's nobody that's like, oh yeah, I love singing harmonies. It's always this, oh my god, I'm so afraid to just like jump into the melody line or forget what note is next, and it happens too where people sing a wrong passing note, like going from one note to another, and the one in between is like so off. But I don't really focus on those as much because I know I can fix it, and in the mix you won't hear it. As much as it's, in solo, maybe not the nicest sounding note in the world. In the mix it's important it's the right note. So you fix it, but it's totally fine. Like, you don't make people insecure over those little things. And you just, write everything down. Ideally, you can even have a second lyric sheet just for harmonies. That could help too. Because this way you can like have different colors and just make sure, okay, that's the higher one, that's the lower one. What do I need? And then honestly, sometimes you just listen to the song so often while you're recording, you come up with harmonies too, and you're like, oh yeah, that would work. Like, it's really interesting how even though you listen to the song so many times, when you listen to it in a different setting, and you're just focusing more just on the performance, you just feel like, oh yeah, this could work. And I mean, it might not, but it's always good to just be flexible in that way. Yeah.
So what if I have a singer that wants to go take after take for the second chorus or the first chorus, and doesn't give me anything new? So like if I do go through the 15 takes and I just solo them and it's everything the same.
Yeah, that can be a problem because it depends on how experienced the singers are. I've had experienced singers and everything sounds exactly the same. And then well, that's how it's going to be like. But for less experienced singers that maybe over-practiced, because sometimes they're a little nervous and then they practice too much and then it's all the same, I generally try to tell them, okay, like, get into a different mindset. That's where the fucking take also comes in, because I'm like, you know what? Just give me the most energy you have and just overdo it. And then underdo it. And you just get them to do a few different versions, because even though you're not going to use that take, you could use the one word from here to supplement the take that was always the same, to just make it a little bit more interesting. And just tell them to, like, maybe think of something else, jump around, like, try to change it up a bit, because, yeah, it can be an issue when somebody does 5 takes and they all sound the same. But, I mean, that just means they're really prepared.
First, thank you for the great insights. When you record screams and shouts with the SM7B, do you usually take off the foam at the top of the mic and maybe use an external pop filter, or do you use the mic as is usually?
I use the pop filter that they give you, like the thin one. I also had a thick one, but it just looks weird and it just throws them off. They love the stage feeling. And then you have to have some kind of pop filter. Even though a scream doesn't really have many pops, it can be an issue, and just pop filters are your lifesaver for sure. I mean, you can also edit pops out, right? Like, we all know how to do that, but if not, I'll just tell you real quick. What I generally do with pops is you just select this little P section, and you use a low-cut filter until you don't hear the P as much. Put it back in, crossfade, and the pop's gone. It's pretty easy. But it's worth the work, trust me. If you have if you get, for example, vocals and you have to deal with them after, take the pops out. Nobody loves them. Yeah.
Questions back here? Here we are.
I thought when people do when you triple things, I thought people need to sing exactly the same thing again. But now I think I learned this is not the case.
So they should sing the same, exactly. But for me, I noticed what you run into is you don't have the time to comp the perfect lead vocal. So they're singing to a take that is a lead vocal, maybe. And then they sing all to that, so you're not even getting what you need. Really, what in an ideal world, you have time to comp in between, and then you have the final lead vocal, and then they sing to that, so it's exactly the same. But because you can really, as long as they're relatively similar, you can totally just change the words around so they all line up. Like, the main thing for words is that they start and end the same. Take the S's out of all of the doubles and the T's, because you don't need 3 T's at the same time. And just adjust so that the timing is right, and you have to tune regardless. So I know it's weird because I also learned, you just have one vocal and then they sing to it. But a lot of times people don't even know what they're hearing and what they're actually singing. So that's another thing. Like when they're listening back, they're like, okay, well, am I singing the one that I'm hearing, or am I singing the other one? Because it's the same one, so it's really hard for them to distinguish. So just getting them to do a really good vocal that is exactly the same that they sang before is easier for me than having them sing to themselves. Especially because a double is really same notes, same timing, everything. And then sometimes for them it's just really confusing who is who here. It's easier if you're a different voice in doubling, right? Yeah.
Thanks. Do you have a different process when you mix your own productions on vocals, or how much do you think about mixing while you're producing, or not think about it at all and don't care and let them do the work? And like,
no, I always think about it, and I generally edit while recording too. Like I cut things out, like breaths I usually leave in, but I put them down. But what I do is like smacks, I take them out just so the artist doesn't listen back to them, because that's always this something sounds weird and they don't really know what. So you want to make sure that what they hear is kind of clean and polished, but also what you give on, right, is your best advertisement. If you give a mixer amazing vocals and they have an artist and they think of somebody to get, they always go with the person that gave them amazing vocals that are labeled, that are organized, that are all consolidated correctly, or, are hitting the right peaks. They would always go to that person. So really your best advertisement is just doing great work, because everyone down the chain is going to be like, yeah, that person was really good. Like everything hit well. Like that's the thing with the compression, right? I could do compressor after, so the singer hears himself compressed and can sing better. And then I completely blindside the mixer. I wouldn't do that, because really what the singer is hearing is that what the mixer should get, so he knows what the singer basically said is okay. So for me, that's why I commit on that. I mean, I could just be lazy and do it afterwards, but no, I really want to give the mixer the best chance. Because in the end too, if the song does well, you're on the credits, so you'll do well. So really this whole, some people have a competition with the next people on chain, and I'm like, no, give them the best thing you got, because once they look back and they see somebody that gave them a session with audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, and somebody that says lead vocal verse, harmony chorus 1, they'll always go with the second person. So.
So you mentioned that sometimes people are not used to hearing their voice on headphones. So did you ever come across that someone is able to sing in tune, but as soon as he has the headphones on, that because of body reverberation, he might lose pitch, his reference point, that in a certain register he would just think he's on, but he's not. Is there anything that you can do about that?
So the first thing is checking the headphone mix. Because I only give them a stereo karaoke mix, I know it's nothing like that will bounce them off, but what can happen is if your voice is too loud in your headphones, you try to sing a little less, and then your voice goes down a bit and you're a little flat. But if you don't hear yourself enough, you give too much energy and you might get pitchy in the other direction. So sometimes it really helps to just be like, hey, like how loud are you in your headphones? Like maybe put it down a bit. And if that doesn't help, some people hate it, but you know what? One headphone off, it works. And it just gives people also, it solves the issue quicker than making it an issue, right? Because the worst thing you can tell a singer is, yeah, you're really pitchy. Because then they're like, oh my God, it's not a good day. What am I going to do? A lot of people are really, as much as they portray being confident in front of, the bands and in front of the stage, once it's a one-on-one, I'm telling you, like, I've had bands in the room with me and the people couldn't sing. As soon as the band leaves, they feel more comfortable and just, like, get more into it. So it's really important to just not make it an issue and be like, yeah, you're really pitchy, but more like, how do you hear yourself? Is it okay? Like, do you maybe want yourself down a little? Or do you maybe want to try putting a headphone off, you know? Just making suggestions without telling, yeah, you kind of are not performing well. You can't say that, so you just friendly ask if there might be a change that might be better. And sometimes they are like, yeah, you know what, I can't really hear myself, like it's better if I have one off. And in that case, make sure that there's not audio coming out so you don't have bleed. Yeah.
Hi Jill, thank you for taking the time. I was wondering if you have like a workflow, a tool when you're working with an inexperienced singer and they want to do a harmony but they don't know how to write it, but they got like they are possible to sing it, but they don't have no idea how they should approach it.
Yeah, so for really inexperienced people like that, the easiest way is either to sing it for them and hope that they remember it, like sing it in the song. But if that doesn't work, honestly, I have taken the lead vocal, just taken 2 minutes of Melodyne, create the harmony so they can sing to the really not well harmony. I've had people tell me, oh, you can just take that, but trust me, it's too far out, it's too weird. So I get them usually to sing it, but it gives them some kind of anchor, knowing, okay, that's the lead line, but this is the harmony. And usually put the harmony a little louder than the lead line in their headphones, so they sing to the harmony and kind of get into it. And you have to just be patient, because there will be probably 2-3 takes where they're just trying to get the line, and then they actually get a good one. And then you really have to let them know right away, like, whoa, this was amazing, like, can I get 2 more? Even if it wasn't amazing yet, giving them this confidence will make the next 2 takes way better. And then after those 2 takes, you can say, okay, wow, like, best take yet, 1 more, please, 1 more. And then you have 3 good takes. Like, you have to kind of find the fine line between, you know, getting them to that point, but then also getting a good performance out of it. Because the first few takes when people do new things is never good, ever. Because they are trying to wrap their head around, like, okay, where do I sing? What do I sing? And they think too much, right? So whenever there's a change, the first take is usually always, I mean, it can be good, but it's never great. So that's usually for them to just like internalize what they're doing, and then they can do better. But yeah, just use Melodyne, heck, there's so many plugins. You can even use Harmony Engine from Antares to find out harmonies and just, you know, have something for people to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having you. I had exactly the same question.
Okay.
How is your experience with Revoice Pro?
I haven't used Reverse Pro yet, so I can't comment on that. Have no opinion on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. I'm just curious if the producer decided to go for live recording. Is it also you are to some extent involved in, or is it a completely different scenario? Like,
oh, you mean like live, as in they are in on a stage?
on the stage, yes.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
In that case, you don't really have many harmonies and stuff, so you're not really involved. Like, they don't have a producer for vocals for that. No. Yeah. But there is a lot of trickery too, and I can tell you that. Like, there is a lot of times when you just double up vocals and you can pretend it was a harmony pedal that they used. So you can do things after, but it's not to the same extent at all, yeah.
Hi, thank you. What's an ideal time that you set up for vocal production with the singer? What's like an ideal time frame?
Like when you get the demo to when you start recording, or?
The whole process when he's with you, like for the day.
The same day. I would try to not make it too long, ideally. I would say 4 or 5 hours maybe, but then usually the voice gives out. It depends on how many breaks they need, really, and how many things you can copy and paste, and how quickly they get things. The ideal thing is just take a little bit more time than you need, because this way there's no deadline, right? And just put your phone away. Don't even have it on. Just, you know, it's just you and me right now, and let's make a great song.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi. We talked a lot about pitch, What about phrasing? When you think, oh, the phrasing is a little bit boring because it's same in every verse, and so what do we do about this? Because it touches more the song than the pitch does.
Yeah, because pitch is something you can change, and I always tell people, look, I can change the pitch, I can change slight timing things, but your performance, that's you, and you have to do it well, because I can't make you sound more interesting just by getting your pitch right and your timing a little bit. Phrasing is something that would have to be addressed in the demo stages, because this way people have time to just get used to the different phrasing. It's really hard to change phrasing because it's a rhythmic thing. So ideally, in the perfect scenario, you have the song ahead of time, you have a demo, and you can write down what kind of harmonies you want. You can touch on the on the phrasing at that point, because it's too early for them to have practiced everything and be prepared. And phrasing is something that has to be done ahead of time, and that can be done 100%. And sometimes it should be, because first verse and second verse sometimes can be boring. And if there's a third verse and it's exactly the same, it really doesn't grow the song. So yes, changing the phrasing can really help. But in that way, I would always do it before recording. This way they can practice, and then when they come in, it is so natural to them that it's not as much of a, stone in the way. They can just go for it. Yeah.
Hi again.
Hi.
Is there any crazy production technique where you say I'm most proud of? I see a stutter edit now in the heavy metal. Is there any crazy thing where you say, yeah, that was really proud. I have done something to the song where you say, yeah, that was really creative and unusual. And a second question, if I can.
Yeah.
Your most favorite plugin you can't live without when you do the work.
Oh, I'll touch on the first one first. It's hard, because really what you're trying to do is not be flashy and like, oh yeah, that's a cool thing I did. It's more about, does it fit in the song? And for that, really, I try to be very creative and just do whatever I can. Like, especially for hip hop, like, I have some hip hop clients that just really want their vocals dry and that's it. And I've noticed nothing fancy works with them and they don't want it. But then there's some that are like, just give me all the bells and whistles, just give me everything. And then you can just try out the craziest things. I think that's what I'm most proud of, because I just really go loose and just try things out. And if they don't work, they'll just be like, maybe not. But it's nothing personal. It's more like it's kind of like, do you like this shade of green? No, maybe a different. Okay, cool. It's nothing personal. It's just like I tried something out and I did it. So I love when you have a little bit more freedom, for sure, because then you can personally learn too how things work with one another, instead of just going the same route and then you're doing the same thing as always. Like, it can be hard to just be stuck in that rhythm. So yeah, when you get the freedom, I totally go all out. And then for the plugins, I would say low cut. I love low cut on everything, almost. And for tuning, especially Melodyne, for me, it's just, it sounds really well. Like, the way I edit too, I can edit really tight, like a lot of people want, but really, I can edit tight without it being so tight that it sounds unnatural. Like, for me, a lot of people always tell me, like, oh, it sounds like you didn't do anything, but it sounds right. And that's what you want. You don't want people to be like, yeah, that sounds fake. Nobody likes fake music. And I've noticed, too, where there's songs on the radio and it's overdone to the point where there's no emotion left. And, I've seen people be very, very diligent and put every transient of the vocal on the grid, and that works, but you really take away from the human feel. And rather than doing that, I make sure that all the harmonies are exactly the same as the lead vocal, unless something bothers me and I know it has to be a little earlier. But yeah, Melodyne for me works. Everyone has different plugins, yeah.
Moin.
Moin.
Can you show us the effect chain after you recorded everything to finish it? The vocals?
So if I were to mix it, or
yeah.
So it depends. Like I said, for hard rock, a lot of times I use saturation. For here, this is not like I didn't mix it. I just did a reference mix, but it still has to sound relatively good. So what I do is I always have a lo-fi on an aux as well as a verb. And then I did have a delay up top too, over here. No, where was it? Over here. So for the one part, there was a nice little delay they wanted. And aside from that, a lot of it is just saturation in different ways. Like I use like between 3-4 different plugins. So it like always changes too, because I don't want to have the same effect on it. And then, yeah, go through reverb. Definitely go through the lo-fi to add it up. And I don't add much either. Like if you look at the lo-fi, I just use 0.1 saturation, 0.3 distortion. But you can tell the difference 100%. Like it's crazy how much it does on that little bit. Just because adding it as an aux, it actually helps you really to have a little bit more control over it, because everything you do on the tracks itself, it's still going through there, but you can just turn it down a bit without affecting the main vocal. It's more like a little upper. And then I generally EQ them too. I didn't do that in that session because I wasn't mixing this one. But I use Pro Q a lot to just take out some frequencies that are a little not working with the rest of the track. And I would definitely, low cut, get the highs a bit up so it sounds a little bit more sonically nice. But it really depends on the backing track. I only had the stereo here, so you can't really mix it in as nicely. Like I would always ask for multi-tracks for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For your doubles and triples, would you sometimes consider just using some of the leftover takes from your lead vocal recordings that you didn't use? Or do you insist on new recordings and maybe even look for something special in those doubles and triples that...
No. I don't look for anything special in those. Those are really just to thicken up the voice and to give it that extra oomph. So I definitely look in the lead vocals, because that's actually the best doubles and triples you can usually find, because they didn't think about it too much. So for me, that's where I look first. And generally when you comp and you go through and you're like, oh, that's a really good take, but that's even better. The one I thought was a good take is usually immediately a double. So when you comp, I just have all these tracks already made, and I just have them muted so I don't hear them all the time, because that can be a little distracting. But you just already put them on there, so you already have a roadmap of where to go. And because I color code everything, when I look, for example, here in the lead of the comp, everything is a different color. So when I look at the comp itself, you can tell that I used most of the red and a little bit of the pink. And this way I know which one wasn't used, because you do not want to use the same one, exact same one, because then you just double it, right? We all know it's just a double in volume. So you have to make sure that it's all organized. And I do that by always having different colors, so I can see visually on the comp these tracks were used, and I don't have to zoom in and look at the name of it. It definitely helps to just be organized in that way. Yeah.
How do you deal with, obviously live performances and studio performances are different.
Yes.
Sure, but I tend to have the experience that if I know a band playing live and then have them in the studio or record something, there's something missing. The interaction, have a guitarist singing and the lead singer, and there's the interaction there, and something is missing in the emotions. It's just not the same. It just doesn't feel right when they just sing it in the studio. It just feels a bit empty. It might be inexperienced, but how do you go about that if you have live musicians singing in the studio and just not kind of having the magic or the feeling that you want?
So one of the things that a lot of singers have that usually also play guitar, they don't know what to do with their hands, right? So that's the first thing. They're putting them behind them, put them in the pocket. They're like, what do I do with my hands? You can give them an electric guitar just to hold and tell them do not play, but at least they know, okay, I have my guitar, I feel a little better. That definitely helps for people that have an instrument usually. And aside from that, another thing I do, I always look at the singer. I don't tell them, but I look at them, and if they just, they just stand there and just like sing like that, it's not going to happen. They have to dance. Like I always tell them, like if you're not dancing, you're not in the pocket. And that's a big part of the magic, being in the pocket. But how do you tell people to be in the pocket, right? It happens the easiest when you dance to the music. And why that is? Because your whole body is already in the same rhythm. So your voice immediately follows your body. It's definitely way easier to go that way. And I don't mean they have to like crazy dance because they still have to be in front of the mic, but just like a little, movement. It definitely helps. So sometimes you just have to really like get them to just relax a bit, play the song, and just joke around and say, hey, if you're not dancing, we're not going to record. And it's just like a little joke, but it gets them to maybe feel a little bit more comfortable moving. Because a lot of people do have issues and like they touch the mic stand, they don't know what to do with their hands. Like just don't think about your hands, like at all. Nobody cares, nobody sees them, but they care. And so sometimes even just feeling like, okay, maybe me being in the room and the other room judging you is an issue for you. So you just turn off the lights and just put like a bunch of fake candles out or something. So they know, okay, nobody can see me. It's literally just my stage. That can help too. Like you might have to change the vibe and the ambiance to get them in that mood, but definitely make them dance. Yeah.
Wow. So I think this was really great. And thank you so much for reminding us of putting so much work and energy and inspiration into vocal recording. It's like really important stuff, and it shouldn't be something that you just do and then you're done. I mean, to hear from you how you do it, how you deal with it, how you consist on, do one more, you can do it, and then still working with the artist to get the best vocal experience, get the best vocal recording is like really important. So thank you very much. I think we know what to do with our hands. Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.